So if you're listening to this right now, chances are you live in an era of just, well, infinite on-demand, bite-sized scrolling.
Right. The endless feed.
Exactly. I mean, every single time you look at a screen, there's a highly sophisticated algorithm engineered by neuroscientists, backed by billions of dollars, and it is actively trying to hijack your dopamine receptors.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It really is. But it is late here in the studio tonight. We're broadcasting from Atchison, Kansas. And if you listen closely, beneath the warm hum of the vintage audio equipment in this room, you might just catch the distant, muffled toll of the church bells outside.
Yeah, it's incredibly quiet tonight.
It is quiet. It's the kind of quiet that, it makes you want to pull up a chair, turn down the lights, and just listen.
Just sit in the dark for a minute.
Exactly. And tonight, we're asking you to do exactly that. Because usually on this broadcast, we take a stack of sources like articles or historical documents, and we guide you through an external topic.
Right, the usual deep dive format.
Yeah, but tonight, we're turning the microphone inward. We're looking at a phenomenon happening right under our noses in the digital landscape. We're diving deep into the very project of Chesterton Radio itself.
Which is, I have to say, it's the perfect night for this kind of introspection.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you really have to stop and ask yourself, in the midst of all that modern noise you just described.
The hyperstimulation.
Right. In a media environment designed to basically fracture your attention into 15-second intervals, why are tens of thousands of people consciously choosing to return to the slow, invisible theater of the mind?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense on paper.
It doesn't. Why are they seeking out voices in the dark? I mean, it defies every metric of modern audience retention. It goes against every rule taught in contemporary media strategy. And yet, well, it's thriving.
Thriving almost feels like an understatement when you look at the raw numbers.
Really?
Yeah.
How big is it now?
Okay, so we have to start with the sheer scale of what's happening here. The sources we're working from outline a project that officially launched about 4 years ago on Substack.
Right, with origins stretching back to around 2018, I think.
Exactly. And since then, it has grown into an absolute powerhouse on YouTube. We are talking about over 74,000 subscribers.
Wow.
Yeah, and an archive of nearly 9,000 videos.
9,000? That's staggering.
It is. But let me be clear with you. Looking at those metrics is like looking at the square footage of a cathedral and thinking you understand what happens inside during a midnight mass.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. Like the numbers only tell you the size of the container, not the nature of the experience inside it. The tagline of the project gives you a much better compass for navigating this space.
The tagline being a modern radio station for timeless stories.
A modern radio station for timeless stories.
That tagline is incredibly subversive when you really break it down. Well, think about the vocabulary being used there. It completely subverts the expectations of a YouTube channel. I mean, when you hear the word channel today, it implies a feed.
Right, an endless feed.
Yeah, and a feed is just a conveyor belt of disposable content that you swipe through, consume, and immediately forget. It's frictionless. And ultimately, it's placeless.
That's very true. It doesn't exist anywhere real.
Exactly. But a radio station implies a destination. It implies a specific frequency that you have to actively tune into.
You have to make an effort.
Right. It implies a place. And when you trace this back to its Substack origins, you realize this isn't just a content repository or like an audio dumping ground.
No, it's much more organized than that.
It functions almost like a digital parish or perhaps a 19th century literary salon. It's a dedicated, almost sacred space where people gather around 3 core pillars, which are mystery, meaning, and faith.
Okay, wait, I have to challenge that analogy just a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Calling a YouTube channel a digital parish or a literary salon, I mean, it sounds incredibly romantic. But at the end of the day, isn't it still just a platform hosted on Google's servers?
Well, materially, yes.
Right. So how does it actually function as a place in a way that, say, a random true crime broadcast does not?
It functions as a place because of the architecture of the attention it demands and the community it gathers.
The architecture of attention.
Yeah, think about it. A parish isn't defined by the bricks of the building, right? It's defined by a shared orientation toward the transcendent experienced in communal time.
Okay, I'm following you.
So when you look at the structure of Chesterton Radio, especially that 24/7 live stream they run, it is explicitly designed to recreate the feel of an old family radio playing in the next room.
Oh, I love that image. Just an old radio humming down the hall.
Right. It isn't asking you to frantically engage or comment or click or react. It is asking you to inhabit a shared auditory space. It's resurrecting a totally lost mode of attention.
It's cultivating a posture of reception rather than a posture of consumption.
Exactly. You receive the broadcast, you don't just consume the content.
Okay, that makes total sense. The architecture of the space dictates how you behave inside it. And, I mean, the breadth of the archive they've built inside this space is just staggering.
It's massive.
It really does feel like wandering into a vast, inherited library in some old manor house. You weren't just getting one flavor of content. You pull down a dusty volume from the shelf. And maybe it's a thrilling, perfectly preserved broadcast of the new adventures of Father Brown.
Which are fantastic, by the way.
So good.
Yeah.
Or you reach for another, and it's the BBC's Saturday Night Theater, or the legendary CBS Radio Mystery Theater.
The creaking door.
Yes, the creaking door. And then sitting right next to those classic mysteries, you have profound literary storytelling and deep reflections on faith.
It's a wild mix.
It is. It's not a modern streaming service like Spotify or Netflix where the algorithm aggressively curates everything to match your supposed micro-preferences.
No, not at all.
It's a curated library of human experience.
And that refusal to bow to the algorithm is why this project is so philosophically significant, I think.
How do you mean?
Well, algorithms are designed to give you exactly what you want right now to keep you pacified.
Right.
To keep you scrolling. Exactly. But a curated library, on the other hand, gives you what you need even if it requires effort to understand. It invites you into a lineage.
A lineage. I like that.
Yeah, because when you listen to a 1950s BBC broadcast, you are entering into a temporal communion with the people who originally sat around their radiograms listening to that exact same performance.
Oh, wow. You're participating in a tradition of storytelling.
Exactly. You're connected to the past.
But, building this vast cathedral of audio means absolutely nothing if the pews are empty.
Very true.
As we said at the top, algorithms are engineered by literal neuroscientists to addict us. So how does a slow 60-minute audio play actually compete with the 15-second dopamine hit?
It's the ultimate David and Goliath media battle.
It really is. Let's look at how the audience is actually interacting with this, because the culture being built here is entirely countercultural. I actually want to read directly from the channel's own manifesto.
Oh, yeah, please do.
They state, and I quote, "No shouty hosts. No modern noise, just voices, stories, and imagination, where stories are given time to breathe."
No modern noise.
Yeah, that phrase, no modern noise, it feels like a physical sanctuary in today's media climate. But is the lack of noise enough to hold a modern audience's attention?
I'd argue it isn't just the lack of noise, it's what the lack of noise forces your brain to do.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Well, this brings us to the fundamental cognitive difference between audio and video. If we look at the neuroscience of how we process media, television, and short-form video, do all the imaginative work for you.
Right, because you're seeing it all.
Exactly. They supply the lighting, the faces, the precise shade of red on the detective's coat, the architecture of the room. Your visual cortex is flooded with information, but your imagination, it's entirely passive.
You're just a receptacle.
Precisely. But old-time radio, it gives you a voice, a script, and maybe the sound of a creaking door or rain against a window pane.
A train whistle in the distance.
Right, and your brain has to actively build the entire universe from those auditory cues. It forces you, the listener, to become a co-creator of the story.
That is what they mean by the theater of the mind.
Exactly. You are building the set in your head.
And because you have to build that universe in your mind, the level of engagement just skyrockets. You have skin in the game.
You're invested.
Yeah, you aren't just watching a story happen. You are actively rendering it in your consciousness. And the listener testimonials in our sources prove that this philosophy is working on a profound, almost intimate level.
The comments are fascinating to read.
They really are. Listen to the language people use when they talk about this station. One listener writes, "Lying here on my sofa with my eyes closed, I can picture the whole story."
That's beautiful.
And another simply says, "I've not watched TV in over 2 years."
2 years.
I know. Think about what a massive behavioral shift that is. Someone completely abandoning the dominant visual medium of our age because an audio stream provided something deeper.
It is a radical detachment from the prevailing culture. And I think it points to a deep, unmet hunger in the modern psyche.
What kind of hunger?
We are starved for active imagination. When that listener says they can picture the whole story with their eyes closed, they're describing a state of flow.
Oh, like a psychological flow state.
Exactly. It's a state of deep cognitive engagement that is deeply satisfying to the human mind. Modern media leaves us overstimulated, but totally undernourished.
That is perfectly said. Overstimulated but undernourished.
Right. But the theater of the mind requires a caloric expenditure of imagination, and the reward for that effort is a sense of true participation.
And you can see the cultural and intellectual impact of that participation in another comment where a listener literally says, I feel my IQ going up by the minute.
That's hilarious, but also very telling.
Yeah. And then you have the spiritual angle, too, with a listener calling it a guiltless pleasure I bet even the Lord likes to listen to.
I love that one.
We're talking about the cultivation of a high-trust, high-attention audience. I mean, platforms today are fighting an absolute bloodbath for 3 seconds of your attention before you swipe away.
Literally 3 seconds.
Right. Yet Chesterton Radio is regularly broadcasting 60 to 90-minute audio plays, and people are staying for the entire narrative arc. They were investing an hour and a half of their finite life into a single story.
They're willing to make that investment because the attention they are giving is being rewarded with genuine meaning, not just, fleeting entertainment.
True meaning.
Yeah, and that brings us to the theological and philosophical underpinnings of the station. We really have to ask why this specific blend of content exists.
Because it is a weird blend on the surface.
It is. Why blend a 1961 BBC murder mystery like The Storm with morning prayer?
Yeah, why combine classic hard-boiled detective stories with deep spiritual reflection? It seems totally incongruous at first glance.
To understand the synthesis, we have to look directly at the channel's namesake, the great English writer and philosopher G.K. Chesterton.
Yes. The spirit of G.K. Chesterton really is the connective tissue here. It's the DNA of this entire project.
He's the patron saint of the whole thing.
Basically, yeah. The sources highlight a specific live broadcast on the channel titled, Why Everything Feels Broken and Chesterton Knew Why.
That was a brilliant piece.
It functions as a deep dive into Chesterton's seminal concept of orthodoxy. It explores reason, madness, and the surprising, almost counterintuitive case for belief in the modern world.
Right.
But how exactly does a Catholic philosopher's defense of faith connect to broadcasting old episodes of CBS Radio Mystery Theater?
It connects to the concept of the paradox, which Chesterton was the absolute master of.
Okay, walk me through that.
Well, Chesterton understood that the world is a paradox. It is simultaneously broken, fallen, and steeped in tragedy.
The reality of sin.
Right. But yet it is also infinitely beautiful, redeemed, and charged with the grandeur of God.
A paradox.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is the direct structural connection between Chesterton's theology and the detective fiction that populates so much of this radio station.
Oh, this is getting interesting.
Think about the underlying logic of a classic detective story. It begins with a community in a state of relative peace.
A quiet country house, usually.
Right. A manor house. Then a crime occurs, usually a murder. That murder is not just a legal violation, it is a profound disruption of the moral order.
Chaos ensues.
Exactly. Suspicion falls on everyone. The world feels broken.
Right, the social fabric is torn. Everyone is a suspect, which means everyone is capable of darkness. It's basically a microcosm of the fallen world.
Yes. And then enters the detective, whether it's Sherlock Holmes with his magnifying glass, or Hercule Poirot with his little gray cells, or Chesterton's own Father Brown with his deep, tragic understanding of human sin.
Father Brown is just the best.
He really is. But the detective must use reason, observation, and a profound understanding of human nature to sift through the lies, uncover the truth, and ultimately restore the moral order.
So solving the crime is restoring the cosmos.
Precisely. Finding the truth in a chaotic mystery is fundamentally the exact same logic as faith. It's the persistent, hopeful search for ultimate truth, justice, and order in a world that seems entirely given over to chaos. The detective story is, well, it's the literature of hope.
Okay, let me push back on that, or at least ask you to clarify for a second.
Sure, push back.
Are you saying that when a listener tunes in to a 1950s murder mystery, they are actively engaging in a theological exercise? I mean, isn't it possible they just want a good puzzle to solve while they do the dishes?
Oh, sure. On a conscious level, absolutely.
Right. And why specifically Father Brown? How does a fictional priest solving crimes act as a bridge to actual faith.
Well, they may tune in just for the puzzle, but the architecture of the puzzle shapes their worldview regardless.
Oh, interesting.
And Father Brown is the perfect example of this. Unlike Sherlock Holmes, who solves crimes by looking at external material clues.
Like cigar ash or mud on a boot.
Exactly, the materialist approach. Father Brown solves crimes by looking inward. He understands the internal corruption of the human soul.
Because he's a confessor.
Yes. As a priest who has heard thousands of confessions, he knows exactly what man is capable of. He solves the murder because he can perfectly imagine himself committing the murder.
Which is terrifying, but profound.
It is. He operates from the theological premise of original sin. So when the station plays a Father Brown mystery, it is dramatizing a deeply Christian anthropology.
It's theology smuggled in through fiction.
Exactly. It's teaching the listener about the reality of evil and the necessity of truth, but wrapped in the comforting, entertaining package of a whodunit.
That perfectly explains the fascinating juxtaposition in their programming schedule. I was wondering about that.
That's what makes them so unique.
It is. It's the juxtaposition that makes this station completely unlike anything else. If you look at the master stream, you might spend an hour listening to a deep dive into Orson Welles' Les Miserables, which, by the way, they accurately frame as the radio masterpiece that brought Victor Hugo's epic of grace and law to life.
Such an incredible broadcast.
It really is. Or you might listen to a tense, gripping BBC murder mystery like Deal with Murder or The Fatal Flaw. You are totally immersed in the darkness and drama of human conflict.
Right.
And then, immediately following the resolution of that mystery, the station transitions into a deeply spiritual moment. A broadcast titled, God is Closer Than You Think. Morning prayer that changes everything.
The whiplash is real, but intentional.
Exactly. On paper, an advertising executive would tell you this is a total disaster. You don't mix murder mysteries with morning prayer. You are supposed to pick a niche and stay in it.
But it works for them.
It works beautifully.
I think it works because both the mystery play and the morning prayer require the exact same posture from the listener, which is stillness.
Stillness.
Yeah. They both require you to sit in the dark and pay attention to something outside yourself. And this brings us to the profound role of silence in this medium.
Let's talk about the silence.
Look at the Substack post referenced in the sources titled, "The Silence You've Been Avoiding Might Be God."
I read that one. It's powerful.
The tagline for that piece is incredibly striking, almost ascetic, really. It says, "In the desert where nothing seems to speak, God finally can."
Wow.
If we tie this theological concept of the desert back to the physical medium of old radio, we find this beautiful parallel. The pacing of classic radio is so much slower than anything produced today. There is actual, literal silence between the lines of dialogue.
That's a great point. When you listen to a modern podcast or YouTube video, even this one sometimes, depending on how people edit, the audio is heavily edited.
Right, the jump cuts.
Yeah, they remove every breath, every pause, every microsecond of dead air to keep the pace artificially frenetic. It's like they are terrified of silence.
They are terrified of silence because silence forces you to confront yourself.
Oof.
That's true. But Chesterton Radio preserves that silence. When the detective asks a question, there is a pause before the suspect answers.
The tension builds in that pause.
Yes. In that 3 seconds of static and silence, the listener's mind is working. And it is in that silence, in the space between the words, that spiritual reflection actually happens. The medium itself becomes a form of contemplation.
So they are training the audience.
Exactly. The listener is being trained hour by hour to endure silence, to find meaning in the quiet, and ultimately to encounter God in the spaces where modern media places noise.
Okay, let's look at the brilliant, almost contrarian mechanics of how they actually deliver this contemplation to you. We've talked extensively about the spiritual philosophy and the cognitive benefits, but the media strategy breakdown is just as compelling.
The mechanics of it are fascinating.
Right. How do you actually run a 24/7 radio station in the internet age? They're using very modern tools like YouTube Live and digital master streams, but they're using them to create shared temporal events.
Which is so rare now.
Very rare. They're bringing back a concept that the internet almost completely destroyed, which is the ritual of the schedule.
The ritual of the schedule is a lost art. And its loss has had profound psychological consequences, honestly.
I would agree with that.
Streaming platforms conditioned us to believe a lie. They told us that we should have whatever we want, exactly when we want it, in whatever quantity we desire.
Binge watching.
Right. It created a culture of gluttony and basically temporal untethering. You can watch a Christmas movie in July at 3 in the morning. Time loses its shape.
Time becomes meaningless.
Exactly. But Chesterton Radio does the exact opposite. It imposes boundaries. It creates what I'd call a liturgy of time.
A liturgy of time. I really love that phrasing. Let's apply that to the nightly mystery block they do.
Oh, perfect example.
This is a program where they play episodes of the classic CBS Radio Mystery Theater in their original broadcast order. But here is the genius part of the strategy. It doesn't just sit in the playlist for you to click whenever you feel like it.
No, it has an appointment.
It airs every single night at exactly 10:3 p.m. Central Standard Time. They even suggest a ritual tag to the audience. They say, lock the door, dim the lights.
Setting the stage.
Think about the psychology of that. It asks you to sync your internal clock to the station, rather than molding the station to your immediate impulses.
Let me use an analogy to explain why that is so powerful.
Go for it.
Streaming is like owning a car. You can leave your driveway whenever you want, go wherever you want, and stop whenever you want. It is hyper-individualistic, but it is also deeply isolating.
Because you're driving alone.
Right. Scheduled radio, on the other hand, is like catching a train. The train leaves the station at 10:30 p.m. If you miss it, it leaves without you.
So you have to make an effort to be there.
Exactly. It forces you to respect time again. It forces you to organize your evening around an event. And when you board that train, you know you are not alone.
That is the crucial element, the shared experience. You aren't just listening to a file on a server. You are participating in a broadcast. You know that somewhere else, in another house, maybe in another state, or even another country.
Someone else is listening.
Right. Someone else is sitting in the dark listening to the exact same creaking staircase at the exact same moment. It creates a community in time. It completely cures the isolation of the on-demand era.
It really does.
And beyond those scheduled events, you have the continuous master streams. They have player.chestertonradio.com, which houses shows 1 through 5,000.
That's so much audio.
And then player2.chestertonradio.com, which carries the library from show 5001 onward.
What is fascinating about those continuous master streams is the concept of a feed that never resets. It just keeps playing perpetually, whether you are listening or not.
Like a river.
Like a river, exactly. And this effectively removes the paralysis of choice. Think about what you did on your television right before you turned this deep dive on. How many minutes did you spend endlessly scrolling through Netflix or Amazon?
Oh, don't ask me that. Too many.
Right. Watching trailers, reading synopses, trying to optimize your viewing choice, only to feel exhausted before the movie even began.
The paralysis of choice is a highly recognized psychological burden. We spend more time choosing the media than actually consuming it.
Which is absurd.
Totally absurd. The master stream eliminates that burden entirely. You don't have to choose. You just tune in, submit to the stream, and let the radio decide.
It requires an act of surrender.
An act of surrender. You trust the curator.
Exactly. It's an exercise in trust. And anchoring this entire YouTube ecosystem, basically providing the foundation for that trust, is the Substack.
Let's talk about the Substack.
The Substack serves as the intellectual and theological anchor of the project. It isn't just a newsletter. It is where the philosophy of the station is articulated.
It's the grounding text.
Right. It's where you find the written morning prayer discussions and the deep-dive essays that contextualize what you are hearing on the live streams. It's a deeply integrated, multi-platform ecosystem.
But crucially, it never feels like a corporate synergistic strategy cooked up in a boardroom by some media conglomerate.
No, not at all. It feels handcrafted. It feels like someone is actually curating this just for you.
It feels handcrafted because it is deeply personal. And that handcrafted nature leads us to what I think is the most pivotal evolution in their entire strategy.
The original content.
Yes.
That.
It is one thing to be curators of the past. Archiving and replaying the golden age of radio is a noble pursuit. It is historical preservation. But Chesterton Radio has crossed a massive, terrifying threshold. They are no longer just an archive.
They are creators now.
They are producing original modern storytelling. They are writing new lore.
This is where the project moves from being a museum to being a living tradition. And we must acknowledge the immense creative risk involved in this leap.
Oh, it's a huge risk.
It is a staggering challenge to replay a beloved, perfectly acted 1950s BBC Saturday night theater broadcast of T.H. White's Darkness at Pemberley.
A masterpiece.
Right. You were talking about productions featuring master stage actors, full live orchestras, and the absolute pinnacle of analog sound engineering. They replay these masterpieces, and then, the very next night, they place their own original, newly written late-night mystery right alongside them.
Side by side.
Yeah. You are consciously inviting the listener to directly compare your modern writing to the absolute titans of the Golden Age.
Right, so why take that risk? From a purely strategic standpoint, why not just stick to the classics?
Play it safe.
Exactly, play it safe. The old broadcasts already have millions of built-in fans. The copyright status often allows for easier broadcasting. Why invest the time, the capital, and the sheer creative agony into writing something brand new, knowing it will be judged against Orson Welles?
It's a daunting comparison.
It is. Let's look at the original works the sources outline. There's The Bells Beneath Black Hollow, which is described as a Saturday mystery exploring a haunting mystery, a buried past, and the sound that refuses to stay silent.
Spooky title.
Very. Then you have The Tall Girl Files and the Gabriel Syme Paradox mystery. These are entirely new intellectual properties built from the ground up.
They take the risk because tradition demands it.
How so?
This raises a vital question for you, the listener, right? Why is it essential that a platform dedicated to the Golden Age continues to write new stories? I believe it's because tradition is not merely the guarding of ashes, it's the preservation of fire.
The preservation of fire. I love that quote.
If you only ever play old broadcasts, no matter how brilliant they are, you eventually become a museum. A beautiful, nostalgic museum, sure, but a museum nonetheless. A place for dead things.
Right, something encased in glass.
Exactly. By writing new mysteries like The Bells Beneath Black Hollow, Chesterton Radio is proving that the medium is alive. They are proving that the format of the audio play, the theater of the mind, is not a dead language like Latin, used only for incantations of the past.
It's a living language.
It is a living, breathing language capable of exploring contemporary human nature.
There is a deep dive broadcast referenced in the archive titled, "Keep the Old Map." I think that phrase serves as a perfect, illuminating metaphor for their entire approach to original content.
Keep the old map. Let's break that down.
Yeah, let me break down how I interpret that. If you were going into the wilderness, you don't throw away the old map just because it was drawn 70 years ago. The topography hasn't changed. Human nature hasn't changed.
The mountain is still the mountain.
Exactly. The mountain is still the mountain. You keep the old map, the classic structures of a mystery, the methodical pacing of vintage radio, the moral clarity of Chesterton, but you use that old map to explore new territory, to tell stories about the specific anxieties and shadows of the modern world.
Keep the old map, but explore new territory. That is brilliant. Let's look at the Gabriel Syme Paradox mystery as an example of keeping the old map.
Okay, let's look at that.
Gabriel Syme is a character from G.K. Chesterton's masterpiece, The Man Who Was Thursday. He is a poet who becomes a philosophical policeman.
A great concept.
By creating a new mystery around a character archetype rooted in Chestertonian lore, they are using the old map, the theological detective, to navigate a new narrative. They are asserting that the philosophical policeman is exactly what the modern world, with all its chaotic ideologies and moral relativism, desperately needs.
We certainly need someone fighting for truth.
Right. They are writing new lore because the modern world needs new defenses of the truth.
And speaking of territory and maps, we absolutely need to ground this broadcast in its physical location.
Yes, the geography of it all.
We have spent a lot of time talking about the ethereal realm of digital storytelling, the invisible theater of the mind, and the abstract concepts of time and space. But this project is not just floating in the digital ether.
No, it's very grounded.
It is rooted in very literal Midwestern soil. Every single morning during the morning prayer broadcast, you hear the exact same grounding phrase, broadcasting from Atchison, Kansas. This is Chesterton Radio.
Atchison, Kansas.
I want to ask you, why does that matter? Does anyone in London or Sydney listening to this stream really care that it originates in Atchison, Kansas?
They care deeply, even if they don't consciously realize it, because there is profound incarnational significance in that geographic marker.
Incarnational significance.
Yeah. Consider the media landscape. Most of the media we consume today is generated in massive, hyper-secular, coastal corporate hubs. Los Angeles, New York, Silicon Valley.
The media bubbles.
Right. It is focus grouped to death, sanitized by committees, and designed to appeal to the widest possible demographic, which usually means it speaks deeply to absolutely no one.
It's placeless media.
It is placeless media, but broadcasting from a small town in Kansas does something radical. It roots the infinite global reach of the internet in a specific, tangible, quiet place.
It gives the station a sense of physical reality. Atchison is a real town with a real river, real brick buildings, and real church bells.
It's a real community.
Exactly. It isn't a server farm in a desert. It is human-scaled. And that human scale extends directly to the economics of how this station survives and operates. This is where the story gets really compelling from a media strategy perspective. We looked at their monetization strategy, and guess what? There are no massive corporate sponsors.
Thank God for that, honestly.
Exactly. There are no abrasive, algorithmically inserted mid-roll ads for mattresses or meal kits or online therapy breaking the tension of a murder mystery right before the killer is revealed.
That is the worst part of modern
It
podcasting.
really ruins the mood. Instead, Chesterton Radio relies entirely on a model of grassroots patronage. They use platforms like Matreon, Subscribestar, and a Buy Me a Coffee feature, which they funnel through a site mentioned in the sources as chuckthefee.com.
Chuckthefee.com, right?
The pitch to the listener is incredibly straightforward, honest, and completely devoid of corporate speak. They simply say, keep Chesterton Radio afloat for half of what you pay the cable guys.
It's such a modest ask.
It is.
It's a return to an older, much more honest transaction between the creator and the audience. In the modern internet economy, the adage is true. If you aren't paying for the product, you are the product.
Your data's being sold?
Your attention is being farmed and sold to advertisers. But the patronage model subverts that entirely. If this station brings you peace, if it raises your IQ, if it gets you through a grueling workday, or if it provides a sanctuary of silence in a noisy world, as the testimonials so clearly claim, then you support it directly.
You essentially become a patron of the arts.
You become a stakeholder in the digital parish.
It changes the relationship entirely. You aren't a consumer, you are a supporter. If we connect this to the bigger picture of internet culture, this economic model represents a sustainable, grassroots rebellion against the algorithm.
A quiet rebellion.
A very quiet rebellion. You are paying to keep the lights on in Atchison, Kansas, so that the stories can continue. And that brings us to the ultimate question. Let's unpack where this is all going.
The future of the station.
Yeah. Based on the trajectory we see in these sources, the organic growth to over 74,000 subscribers, the deep library of original content, the highly engaged Substack community, the solid patronage model, what is the future vision for Chesterton Radio? We called it a digital parish earlier. Could this digital parish eventually manifest as a physical space?
I think that is not just possible. I think it's the natural, perhaps inevitable progression of this
A
philosophy.
physical storefront.
Yeah. As the digital world becomes increasingly synthetic, as AI-generated content floods the internet with deep fakes and algorithmic slop, the premium on physical, authentic human spaces will skyrocket.
People are going to crave reality.
People will crave the tangible. It is entirely plausible and deeply exciting to envision a physical storefront studio in Atchison, Kansas. Imagine walking down a quiet Midwestern street at night.
Okay, picture it.
You see a brick storefront. Inside, through the glass, you see the vintage audio equipment, the warm glow of the lamps, and the on-air sign lit up red in the dark.
A place where the virtual and the physical actually meet. A working radio studio that you can walk past, knowing that in that very room, someone is broadcasting timeless stories out into the global night.
It would be beautiful.
It would be a physical anchor for a worldwide community. A place where listeners could actually gather, not just in the scrolling chat of a YouTube live stream, but in physical reality. They could sit in the studio audience, hear the silence in the room, and participate in the broadcast.
It's a vision that perfectly aligns with their whole ethos.
It really is a beautiful vision for the future, one that perfectly aligns with the deeply incarnational theology that runs through all of their programming. The Word made flesh, or in this case, the digital signal made brick and mortar.
As we draw this late-night conversation to a close, looking out over the landscape of modern media, I want to leave you with a final thought on the enduring, mystical nature of the human voice.
Please do.
We are living through a period of unprecedented, rapid technological upheaval. The flashy, short-form, hyper-stimulating videos that dominate our screens today. They will eventually fade.
They will.
The platforms will change their names, the algorithms will shift their priorities, and the hardware will become obsolete. But long after all of that modern noise has passed into irrelevance, the simple, profound act of one person telling a story in the dark to another will remain.
It's foundational to who we are.
It is the oldest form of communication we have. It is how we sat around the fires in antiquity. It is how we pass on culture. It is how we explore the deepest, most terrifying mysteries of the human heart. And ultimately, it is how we pass on faith.
The human voice in the dark. It really is that simple and that profound. Thank you for joining us in the studio tonight and for exploring this fascinating digital and spiritual landscape with us.
It's been a great conversation.
In a world that constantly demands your distraction, that seeks to monetize your outrage and fracture your focus, we know that your attention is the most valuable thing you possess. It is the currency of your soul. We are deeply honored that you chose to spend it here with us, diving deep into a project that reminds us of the enduring power of a story well told and the profound grace of a moment of silence. You've been listening to Chesterton Radio, broadcasting from Atchison, Kansas, where stories still matter.